Hello, everyone. This is PamelaTopjian, and today I'm going to talk about home birth and midwifery. So, the main reason I'm doing this is I want to inform people and to let people know that they have options, to let people know that midwifery is alive and well in the US anyway, and it's not just something of the past. And midwives are well trained and they can handle natural uncomplicated childbirth. And even there are some midwives that have even extra training that can handle a lot of usual quote unquote complications that might come up in a birth. So I'm just going to give a little example of my experience. And I had my second born at home. My firstborn was in the hospital. It wasn't necessarily a traumatic or highly interventioned childbirth, but I had wanted a natural birth, and I was a teenager. But it doesn't matter because even first-time mothers a lot of times don't know all their options and don't really know. You can't explain or know birth until you've had birth yourself, right? Until you've given birth yourself. So I had wanted a natural birth and I didn't really know exactly what that meant, but I wanted it to be as close to what I don't want to say animals in the wild because I didn't want to, squat under a tree, but I wanted it to be just the natural process that, ovulation, menstruation, pregnancy, it's a natural process and it's not something that is always an emergency or always something that is dangerous. Of course, there's potential dangers, and there is potential dangers in absolutely pretty much everything we do, but we don't always go to the hospital for all these things. I'm not here to dispute mothers who are more comfortable going to the hospital. It's absolutely about being comfortable and feeling free to give birth in a way that is comfortable to you. It's all about knowing your options and just have making an informed decision. So like I said, I wanted to have a natural childbirth and I didn't. It was, didn't get Pitocin. I was not hooked up to a constant monitor. There was a lot of things that it was considered a natural childbirth, but it felt very invasive. Laying in a hospital bed, a bunch of people I didn't know coming in and out. Um, they did break the water, and I gave birth very quickly. It was my first birth. I was 17. They expected me to be there all day and all night, and they broke the water to speed things up even though I hadn't even been there a half an hour and the baby's heartbeat was fine, I was doing fine. My blood pressure, my heartbeat, everything was fine. But they thought they would help me along and speed it up. And this can lead to other issues. And then down the line, people will say, I couldn't have had a home birth because of these issues that came up during my birth. But a lot of times they don't realize it's because of these even small interventions that they do sort of almost routinely. So I had wanted a natural childbirth. It wasn't what I expected. So after I gave birth to my firstborn in the hospital, I started searching, and this is before internet. I started searching on my own. I had went to the library, got a bunch of different books. I contacted midwives and, just found birthing centers in the yellow pages, I think. And I had a few conversations on the phone, just sort of cold calling them. And email wasn't a thing back then. This is the mid 80s. And I just wanted to be informed for my next one, and I wanted it to be more natural. And that's when I learned that midwives were not something just of the past and were not something that was just your obscure sort of, homesteaders type of people and, or just the Amish or something. That people that lived out in cities and regular society were having home births and very successful and very pleased with their home births. So I started reading all I could for years. And I had decided that my next one would be at home, would be under the care of a midwife and at home. And unless, I was totally okay with if there were complications that came up in the pregnancy, or even during labor, that I was okay with going to the hospital because that's what it's there for, if there's an emergency or if there's some sort of special issues that come up. So my second birth was 9 years later. I was in my 20s. I was married and I had planned to have a home birth with a midwife assisting. She didn't make it in time. My mother was there and she was looking at we were given a pamphlet, we were given a little book about what to do in case emergency childbirth, meaning nobody else was there. And my mother was frantically looking through the book and shouting out things. And my husband was at work, but he made it home in time before her birth. But he had made me a little birthing stool, and we were in our living room and we just prepped everything. And I was almost like my own midwife. I had done enough studying and research on this that I was telling people kind of what I was doing and what to do. And it was a beautiful birth. Just laboring at home, being able to walk around. In early labor, I had some banana bread that, I had made the night before, I think, and just kept sipping on herbal tea and stuff like that. And I sat in a bathtub with different herbs in the bathtub. And I think we had some like arnica oil and things like that. And even just olive oil and things to help with swelling or any pain. So yeah, so it was beautiful. And I wouldn't have traded it for the world. There was a hospital nearby just in case. So the whole time that I was pregnant, I did watch on VHS many home births and just sort of get that in your mind and to see how people handled different things and to see how a normal home birth would go. And I should say, quote unquote, normal. Um, because we're all individuals and our births will all be a little bit different. But I wanted you to know that it's still possible. And what are some of the other reasons that people will choose to have a home birth? Obviously, it's just going to be more natural. You're not going to be subjected to people telling you, you know, lay on your back for this amount of time. You have to be hooked up to machines so that you might feel like you don't, even though they say you can get up if you want and walk the halls or just, squat in your room or on your bed, they might tell you that. But if you're already laying down and you're hooked up, you're sort of intimidated to even ask if you can, rather than just moving around to your comfort. You're stuck in bed. And so, my second born was in the early 90s. So I don't know what goes on in hospitals now. I don't have a baby in my life at this point. I don't have grandchildren or anybody that I know close that have had babies that we are close enough to have talked about the births. So I don't know what goes on now. But back then, you were mostly laying down on your back, hooked up to different monitors, also just having people coming in that you don't even know in and out of the room. So it's more calm and peaceful. It's a more intimate experience. You can you know, light candles, play your music, use whatever, ointments and oils that you feel like you want to use, or homeopathic remedies, things like that. You don't need to sort of sneak them in the hospital or ask your doctor if it's okay by them. So you get to sort of be in more control of the birth. So also when there's medical equipment around and you're hearing the beep beep beep, that might give some comfort to people knowing, oh, the heartbeat sounds good, right? But on the other hand, there is a mindset of being in the hospital. This is where I go if I'm sick. This is where I go for emergencies. Just having that sort of in the back of your mind. It's almost like a muscle memory thing. Like if you've ever spent time in the hospital for a serious illness or injury, when you go in there again, you're going to kind of have that in the back of your mind, whether you're aware of it or not. And So that's part of it as well. Also, a lot of these interventions that they do have caused a lot of problems that a lot of women will say, I would have died. My baby would have died. I would have had these problems, or I had these problems. I couldn't have been at home. And they don't realize that a lot of those problems were caused by some of these early interventions, like giving Pitocin. They do it all the time, and that's to speed up labor. Well, you don't let things happen naturally. You're speeding it up. Just think about, trying to open a flower before the bulb is ready to come open on its own, or trying to take the butterfly out of the cocoon before it's ready. I mean, you can be in labor and it can stop and your water didn't break and it's fine. Maybe it's not quite ready. It's just like what they call Braxton Hicks, might be practice. But if you go there and maybe you're like sick of it, it's like, hey, yeah, let's move this along, and you get Pitocin, and then maybe a few hours later, there's something wrong with the heartbeat, or the baby's coming down too fast and you're tearing, or they're cutting you a little bit, or they want to give you an epidural because suddenly it hurts real bad when usually you would ease into that. It would eventually get a little stronger, a little stronger, a little stronger. But just all of a sudden, you're at a later stage of labor, it's going to hurt more. And there's all kinds of potential problems with all of that. So again, I don't want to say that I'm against hospital birth. And if you are more comfortable being in that environment, by all means, I want you to be where you are comfortable for your birth. And I want you to just know all of your options and be aware, make informed decisions, as I have said. So, from the CDC, home birth in the US is at a higher rate than it's been in over 30 years. So that's good news. It's still only pretty rare, only about 2% of births being at home. But that's about 13% more than 30 years ago. And it's interesting because my home birth was 32 years ago. So that's interesting. So then I apprenticed with midwives after my home birthed baby was of school age. So I think she was about 5, 6 years old when I started apprenticing. And I think it was about a year, and I had the absolute honor to assist in about, I don't know if it was about 10 to 12 home births, and all very different and all miraculous. Just, I cherish that time in my life so much. So I still follow the midwife that I apprenticed with. I follow her on social media, and she's in Michigan, and she's just as busy as she ever was. So part of her clientele are Amish, but a lot of everyday women that of all walks of life are choosing to have home births. So another thing too that made me want to do this is recently, just like this year, so many years went by, it kind of wasn't even in my orbit around me, midwifery or, home birth, any of that. None of that was a part of my life or even, like I said, in my orbit, in my in my world around me. So just this past year, it's been coming up a little bit. I see things on different social media and different people talking about it. And I also now have a podcast, and I'm going to have on, which I don't think she'll be on until August, maybe the episode won't be released, but I'm going to have a doula. So she's a guest and she's in Canada. If you're a doula or a midwife and you'd like to be on my podcast to share what you do, it's Holistic Connections, Conversations with Holistic Practitioners. I would love to have you on. Would love to continue this conversation. If you were at all in the home birth midwifery world back in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, and I don't know anymore if the newer people coming up know about this woman, but you knew about Ina May Gaskin, and you probably read at least one of her books, if not more. She was part of a community known as the Farm in Tennessee. And they just lived like what would have been called like a commune. People worked they worked within the little community and grew their own food, and people who knew how to do this would do it, and people who knew how to do that did it. And that's how it went. And so they were delivering most of their babies that on the farm. And Ina May Gaskin had started the farm, and she was the midwife, still alive. She was born in 1940, I believe, so she's in her 80s. And that farm was started in 1971, I believe it was. So she wrote these books. They even have some, I think, a documentary. I'm not sure. I should look that up, and if I find anything, I'll put it in the description below. But yeah, so she was somebody that I devoured. Her book was Spiritual Midwifery book, and there's so many others, but that one was one that it was like my Bible. Yeah, so I suggest you look into her books. And if you have any questions about home birth, midwifery, or what your options are now, I would suggest, I mean, we've got the internet. Everything is open to you to learn about and to educate yourself on. So please check it out. I think that it's good to make informed decisions. And sometimes when people have had cesarean sections or have had some traumatic birth experience, they feel like they're not a good candidate for home birth. But it's worth it to talk to midwives and to find out, what they would do in certain emergencies that may have happened to you in the past, or what they do to prevent those things from happening, or just come with them with questions. I don't think there's any midwife out there that would not welcome your questions, regardless of if you decided to hire them or not. Even if before you get pregnant, if you're planning on, having children and you're not even pregnant yet, it's great to get all the information for all your options and read, read, look these things up. Yeah. So I think that that's all I have to say on that. And if you have any questions, please put them below. Reach out to me. If you're a midwife or a doula, please reach out if you would like to be on Holistic Connections podcast. It's on all the regular podcast platforms, but it's also in a tab in the playlist tab under Holistic Connections right here on this YouTube channel. So thanks for listening. I hope that this was a little bit informative or at least interesting. And if you watched till the end, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day.